Hello, everyone. Come in, sit down, and let's have a talk. Casual chit-chat about D&D. So, for today, we shall be talking about a PC I once played as named James Kainwood. I played with him extensively, actually much more than Drabble, and actually do have an ending for his story that I shall tell, though it happened out of campaign. So, the story of James Kainwood is as follows. He was born of two very dangerous individuals. A man who was known throughout the lands as a murderer. Such a prolific murderer, in fact, that he was considered the most dangerous non-magical force in the country in which he resided. During the time he was active, anyway. Everyone you can imagine, he's had a hand in killing. Soldiers, guards, farmers, innocent men, women, children. It didn't matter. He was a man angry at the world and wanted the world to feel his pain. But then he met another who was quite like him, except that she was a mage, quite a powerful one. And they had a child. Unfortunately, soon after the child was born, she was taken away to prison, actually got caught. And in order to raise the child themselves, this man who was once a murderer, this man who was once the worst thing to happen to his home country, decided to raise this boy himself, alone and in isolation, away from the world. This boy is James Kainwood, my character. His father was incredibly kind to him and provided him with more than everything he needed. Taught him how to defend himself. Taught him how to make money, though in a very different way than most, resulting in him having many roguish skills. But then, later in life, not super late, like teenager, James had developed a fascination for magic. He witnessed it cast once, and he just, from the moment he saw it, he fell in love with it. As this amazing thing that he could study, break down, and understand. Frankly, he pursued it much as like a nerdy special interest of sorts. Just how he was. Unfortunately, the country in which they reside, magic is illegal. So it's not very easy to learn. But James's dad has many underworld connections due to his bad old days, and through that was able to provide James many books and many other ways of learning magic, but it was very limited without a proper tutor and without more hands-on access, resulting in him having very limited magic. And between all the roguish things he would taunt and this little bit of magic, results in him being an arcane trickster rogue, who's, once he turned 21, set out from his home. Because he wanted to learn. He wanted to know more of the world, but most of all, wanted to know more of magic. He wanted to expand his knowledge, and he would do anything to get it. And so he did. He left his home and traveled all the way across the world to the elven country in which magic was abundant. Saw many, many great things, but the biggest thing is that he heard a rumor of a library with all the oldest secrets of magic in the world, hidden out in the desert. So, of course, that is where he set off next, heading to a desert town to prepare and look into said rumor. And it was in this town, in this desert town, that he met various companions. Very strange companions. Most of them were tieflings. Yes, 3 of them were tieflings, if I remember correctly, now that I'm recalling it. And last one was a peculiar elf woman. And she is a very important connection to James later on. Her name is Iona. And so, James and gang set off into the desert, functioning as a party, fighting through the desert, trying to survive and trying to find secrets. Some of the party wished to seek secrets as well. Some of them seeked glory and fame, and some just plain wanted money. And so they went out, fought some giant desert worms, encountered some camels, and one camel was one of the party threatened the poor camel into obeying her. The poor thing. And going past that, there was much learned about the other members of the party, but the most important of which that is important to the tale of James is Iona's situation. Iona is a person who is an elf who had the unique talent and gift of being able to generate fire without the use of magic. Purely through the use of her key. And to be transparent, this was a homebrew bender class, elemental bender class that we used in the campaign. And she chose, and the player that played Iona chose a firebender for Iona. And she, the character Iona, had the goal of, well, she kind of already believed it, but also knew that she could truly become it. It was a bit of a double meaning there. And is that she wanted to be a fire god, and she believed she was destined for it, and that was her entire goal. James and Iona had had arguments. They clashed. They butted heads over this concept. For Iona wished to be worshipped even before she ascended. James was not a man who worshipped things, especially things that had not proven themselves worthy of worship, thus leading to conflict. But they still worked together as best they could. And they trudged on through until they found a puzzle of sorts that involved a basilisk in the middle of the desert. Once the puzzle was completed, it opened a portal, which took us all to a entire blooming city in a demi-plane. In said city, we got to explore and get to know the people there and do quests and many, many things. But it was here that we also met our mortal enemy for the rest of the campaign. A strange being that, while they took the form of a mortal, was actually some eldritch creature from the far realms. And they called themselves Tommy. And Tommy made it very clear that he wanted the party for something. We didn't know what, but he disappeared as soon as he came, despite the fact it was very clear immediately that we were all part of some prophecy that he had knowledge of, and was the reason he wanted us. We didn't know at the time. And we continued on. And in order to kind of earn some money and gain prominence with the populace, we decided to enter into the arena, in which we would fight monsters and overcome adversity. And we did. People cheered as we brutally murdered a wyvern. Way quicker than we had any right to. And then after a couple rounds of killing wyverns, and smaller monsters, we became confronted with the final challenge of the arena. Tommy, or what we believed was Tommy at the time. And we fought him as best we could, but no dice at all. He was far too powerful for us. But then, towards the end of the fight, this would-be Tommy turned into a mass of ooze, which latched on to James and seeped into his being. And then, in his head, James had a conversation with this being. Realized it was not Tommy, but another Far Realms being that had a grudge against Tommy. Wished to help us against him for... It's hard to say at the time what reasons it was, but retrospectively, we can say it was a combination of selfish, petty reasons and some level of benevolence. And said specifically that if James were to allow him to bond with him and further help him, that he would grant him direct magical knowledge, which James happily accepted, and thus a multi-class into a warlock of a great old one warlock, which was plenty fun. But then, the further we got along, the more tension began to grow, because everyone else in the party was very much against the decision that James had made to become one with this being. James was happy too, though, despite whatever risk there was to him. He thought it was great. He got to have more knowledge. That's all that mattered to him. He ended up naming the creature that lived within him Jimmy. And so, James, Jimmy, and the party went on. They met the king of the city, got the passes necessary to enter the library they'd heard about and to gain the knowledge that they wanted. And everyone got to have their own kind of private time where they got to learn what they wanted to learn. And through this, James learned where his mother was, learned the exact prison where she was, and learned where she had got her magic. She had also gotten it from a great old one. And then Iona had a moment where she got to see her future as a fire god. And she got to see that she did truly ascend. But she was not the god that she had envisioned. She was a brutal murderer, burning everything around her down. People, buildings, everything that could burn, burned. And she was horrified seeing this version of herself, unrecognizable to her. She began to doubt whether she should achieve her goal. How could she possibly turn into that? And it was thanks to James that she got pulled out of it, this mind state that she was in. James sat with her and kind of just ran through a logic tree with her, essentially. Told her that the future that she saw was probably just because of her diving into godhood without considering it carefully first. Considering the exact method and how that could affect her and things of that nature. Just running through that dialogue tree with her, that logic. And with that, he said to her that as long as she could apply a decent logic tree to every possible method that she came across, she could make herself become a fire god that she wants to be. Something worthy of being worshipped. Something more than just aimless fire and destruction. This inspired Iona, and made Iona become very bonded to James, and James to her. After this, there were many, many adventures. Many I'm not going to cover, just because it would take too long. But where the story ended is something I think is worth mentioning, regardless. That is that after all the adventures, for all the tragic things that they'd both been through, James and Iona settled down. Iona had achieved a certain type of godhood, one in which that allowed her to live a semi-immortal life while still having these godly connections and responsibilities. Well, James had this position as a teacher of magic in the country he was born, a country in which magic was once illegal. And Iona spent her time spreading worship of her, trying to instill the values of passion and independence and even kindness. And James, as a teacher, still stuck with Jimmy, but they grew on each other quite a bit. Good little mind mates living in the same body. And they grew to love teaching other people magic and spreading their knowledge, creating more and more mages. Proved to be just as fun as finding that knowledge to begin with. And then, when James wasn't teaching, Iota wasn't spreading her religion, they would always come home to each other, sit together, and they lived their life together. For by this point, after countless adventures, they had bonded beyond just friends or companions, or fellow adventurers. They had become something more. Something happy and wonderful. And that, while a very heavily shortened version of it, is the story of James Kainwood in its entirety. I hope you all enjoy listening to me ramble about this character. And if you have any stories of characters that got to complete their arcs, find their endings, feel free to tell me about it in the comments. Maybe I'll make a video about it. But in the meantime, I'd like you to sneak attack that like button and subscribe. Have a good day, everybody.